Let's get the read from the president's former White House press secretary and best-selling author of The Briefing, Sean Spicer. Hey, Sean, what did you think?
Well, just on its face, it's better to be a viewer than a briefer, I'll tell you that. So it's nice being able to watch the briefing instead of give it. Look, I think that one of the things that we've lost focus on, Neil, is the fact that we have a Senate confirmation going on and that there are serious allegations, right? But what this has turned into, and I think Sarah referenced this, is a circus. There is now stories about him throwing ice, what he did when he was in kindergarten. I mean, we have lost focus into the serious nature of this confirmation and the serious charges that Dr. Ford have leveled and allowed the media to run ramshot and bring up everything that's gone on in his past and his background and his childhood. And I think that's unfortunate for both reasons, both because people, I think, aren't going to want to serve anymore because they've recognized that this is the level to which, you know, this circus has affected the desire for people to want to serve in public office. And secondly, I think even when it comes to Dr. Ford and the charges that she has leveled, that there was a degree to which the reason she came forward in the first place and wanted to do so anonymously is so that it didn't become a spectacle. We've lost both of these in this discussion. And now, in large part to the way the media has covered this, it has become an absolute disgrace.
Do you get a sense of the president does trip on the message with the comments he made at this rally? I know for the first few days of all of this, he was being very measured, very careful in his responses. And then the wheels come off and he invites the kind of reaction he gets from some of these senators who say it's best not that you weigh in on this.
Well, look, I obviously don't know, but I get the sense at least that there's a bit of frustration on the president's end about how this is covered. He puts up a guy like Kavanaugh with a stellar record. There are allegations that are brought forward. The president agrees that it is worth looking into these and that the allegations are serious and merit an investigation. And yet it goes off the rails and the coverage becomes everything but a discussion of the qualifications that Kavanaugh has and his record and the facts and an entire, you know, like I said, an entire circus. I think there's clearly a level of frustration on his end.
I'm taking a leap here just on my own, Sean, and you're free to dismiss it, but this New York Times report that goes back into financial transactions and the president and working with his father, Fred, and the emergence of the Trump real estate empire and the role the president had. And it got me thinking it happens sometimes that maybe this is a preview of coming Mueller report findings that have nothing to do with collusion, maybe nothing to do with Russia, that it is veered into business transactions that go back decades. And I hazard that supposition only because prior investigations of presidents have veered wildly off course. So Bill Clinton's famously that started out as a real estate examination and, you know, how he acquired certain lands, et cetera, and then ended up being about, you know, an intern in a blue dress. Is it your sense that maybe whatever the details of the Times and what's accurate, what's not, what looks offensive to the president or not, that the Mueller investigation is that, his business dealings?
Well, I can certainly see why you would think that that's possible, because you're right. I mean, in the Clinton investigation, we started off as a land deal gone bad, turning into an inappropriate relationship with an intern that was lied about under oath. I hope that that's not the case. I hope the president's lawyers have had discussions and taken steps to keep the scope of the investigation focused on the allegations, which, again, there's been nothing to suggest there was any type of collusion. And all of the current charges are regarding actions and acts that were inappropriate by others that weren't involved in actually the campaign at the time. So I get why you're going there. I hope that that's not the case. And I do think it's fascinating to see the level to which the New York Times will go as far back as they can to go after this president. Anybody objectively, whether you like the president or his policies or not, that doesn't understand the visceral nature that so many in the media have towards this president and the lack of objectivity that exists should surely take a look at this and realize that when you're going back 30 and 40 years to dig out old records that have, you know, well past any contemporaneous business dealings, you understand why people on the right believe that the media is going after us.
Do you get the impression, though, that someone fed a lot of this material to the New York Times? You know, obviously a number of names come up. I'm not here to accuse anyone at all, but the New York Times got, you know, their hands on all of Fred Trump's tax reforms for the business, et cetera. For all I know, they might have the president's. He was very reluctant during the campaign and since to release his own tax returns. What did you think then? And do you think there might be a chance for him to vindicate himself by releasing those returns, especially the ones of the years covered now?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's up to him. You saw earlier Rachel Maddow did something where illegally releasing copies of his returns. And I think that if you understand from the president's mindset the level of attack that he has faced and the negative coverage and the lack of objectivity that he has faced, you at least, I think, have an understanding as to why he's skeptical about ever getting a fair shake. And so I think that that's probably currently the mindset that exists, which is, why would I ever do anything to help these folks when every time that I try to do some level of transparency or showing them something, they figure out what the negative angle is. So I don't see a lot of promise that that's going to be the case. And I understand at least his level of frustration as to their lack of objectivity.
The reason why I mention this is the president, one of the biggest things, without getting the details of the New York Times, Sean, and you were dealing with this during the campaign, his central story has been, yeah, my father helped me out a little bit, gave me $1 million. Now we're told over the course of his career, in today's dollars, it would be north of $418 million, that there was more to that than was the case, and that the father had his son's back financially and otherwise multiple times. Does that, you think, whether it's true or not, gnaw at the president, that a story, that it's not exactly a rags to riches deal, but that this story is now held as maybe a myth?
Yeah, I'm sure, because only he and obviously his father, his late father, and his accountants understand whatever deals were made and loans were actually made. I don't, obviously, for many of us going back 30 or 40 years, you don't know exactly what the intricate trappings of a lot of these deals were, or how this thing happened. And we're relying on the New York Times, which doesn't exactly have a strong track record when it comes to their objectivity of covering this president. So I look at the story very skeptically. You saw just in their coverage of Judge Kavanaugh the other day, they've got somebody covering Judge Kavanaugh that publicly was very clear on their own Twitter page about their disdain for Kavanaugh and conservatives. So I don't think the New York Times is coming at this with a level of clean hands that causes one to look at this and say, with objectivity. They've shown time and time again the level of visceral hatred they have to this president and everything he stands for.
You know, if the market's worried about any of the stuff that we've mentioned, they have a funny way of showing it. They're racing to new highs. The economy's doing well. We just had a service sector job growth report that blew away estimates. Right. Another one from the service sector economy, non-manufacturing economy, at an all-time high. The president always feels he can't get that message out. Do you think it will get out for the midterms?
I hope so. I think largely the economy is a gut feeling. If you think you're doing better, if you feel like you're saving more, then you do well. And I think people are feeling the economy. You can't tell people they're doing better. They have to feel it. I think they are. These deals, these statistics show it. I think the way that he's renegotiated the U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement has been phenomenal, and that's going to reflect well in the markets. People are going to start to continue to feel the effects of this president's policies, and I think that's why we'll do well in November. America First, the super PAC that I work for, is out there doing everything we can to make sure that people understand how these policies are making for a better country and improving the lives of every American.
All right, Sean, great catching up with you. Thank you very, very much.